dread it, run from it. Chappie is always there. Welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
It's the chappiest time of the year. And it's me, your host. I am Consciousness. I am Jackson Keller.
You know, this episode has been a long time coming. We have talked about doing this basically since we started the podcast, but we kept kicking it down the road, being like, we want to save it for a special occasion. Like this has to be a special episode when we finally do it. And my friends, that time has finally arrived. If you don't know what we're talking about, the short and skinny of it is the podcast is going on indefinite hiatus sometime in January-ish. For a full breakdown, there is a update episode that got dropped about the same time as this episode. It's on the feed. Go listen to it. Jackson explains why. I explain what that means. And it's out there. It's like a 10-minute listen. Listen to it. Know what's going on. We're not here to talk about that.
No, we're not.
We're here to talk about Chappie.
A movie that I've been clowning on since like the very beginning because this movie drives me up the fucking wall. I love it and I also hate it. That's the duality of Chappie. It's one of the most fun movies to clown on because it's so fucking stupid. It's so pedestrian. Yet at the same time, it is so singular and unique.
If you are unfamiliar with Chappie, I don't even know how to begin describing it. Actually, that's a complete lie. It's like if someone saw The Iron Giant and said, what if I made it R-rated and didn't understand anything that happened in it? Which is to say, there's a robot. It's got the human consciousness going on with it, whole thing. But it's not about that. It's about learning to be a person. And also there's kind of a weird gun violence metaphor throughout it that doesn't really amount to shit, unlike the Iron Giant. That's basically Chappie, right? And D'Antford is there, a DJ outfit for some inexplicable reason.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that like the plot on its own is so fucking basic. Like there's a reason that I keep clowning on Chappie in particular when it comes to like shitty robot AI movies. Or like whenever, like in the Nier episode, like there was a lot of discussion about my trepidation that game was going to pull a Chappie, which it doesn't, because that game is actually very well done and has an interesting story.
I made sure to text Jackson as I was replaying it to be like, oh no, Jackson's immediately going to think this is trying to do a Chappie. Fuck, I have to text him to let him know that the first few hours are not indicative of the rest of the game. You cannot assume that it's a Chappie. Do not do this.
I mean, because that's the thing, right? Is that like AI, gaining its humanity, like robot gaining its humanity story, that doesn't have to be a thing that I dislike. Like narratively, at least, I like Nier. Like, I do love the Iron Giant. Who doesn't love the Iron Giant? Iron Giant's great. What the Iron Giant is not, though, is so cloying and irritating and fucking stupid. I mean, I'm honestly like, I'm gonna level with you folks. This has turned out exactly how I wanted it to. This is exactly how I hoped it would end. I'm like the villain, like throwing off his trench coat. Like Chappie's there, after a long journey. I'm ready to throw down. And the climax is perfect because going in, I was worried about a few possible outcomes. The first is that Chappie, I mean, this would have been interesting in its own right because Chappie is so buck fucking wild in some ways.
So buck fucking wild in so many ways. Don't minimize how buck fucking wild it is, because even in the ways that aren't buck fucking wild are buck fucking wild just due to the juxtaposition of how buck fucking wild everything else is.
That's true. That's a fair point. So Chappie is so buck fucking wild Like, I legit did not know how Sean was going to react to this movie, partially because I only ever saw it once in the theater and, like, walked out mad. Like, that was the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Obviously, I wasn't going to rewatch it, but it's, you know, it's become such a meme. It's become such a, you know, touchstone for the podcast. We had to do it. And so, like, I legit, like, I didn't have a strong enough memory of the movie, but I remembered it being weird enough. I'm like, man, like, if Sean ends up being a Chappie stan, like, this is going to be an interesting fucking discussion.
And for what it's worth, the other element to that too is that Chappie is a movie that for all intents and purposes should absolutely be my shit. The should is doing some heavy lifting there, and I will talk about my feelings on Chappie extensively in a minute here.
So then there was the other even more dreadful outcome that I actually mentioned in our you know, December bonus episode, that after spending 3 years, like 3.5 years of doing nothing but clowning on Chappie every week, is coming back. You know, I haven't seen it since I was like 19, 20. You know, coming back and discovering that with my elevated big brain that, oh, Chappie is good, actually, which would put me in a very awkward position, but also be pretty funny in its own right. Or maybe even worse than that, just discovering that Chappie is dull and there's nothing to say. My friends, Romans, countrymen, I've gotten everything I ever wanted. Chappie is a piece of fucking garbage in all the ways that I remember it and more, and it is hysterical.
I am trying to think about how I want to broach Chappie from a personal level. Okay, I think the best way to do this is honestly to say that, again, this is a movie I absolutely should have loved. It has all of the elements of things that I really like. I love me a what if robots are human story, and like asking where is the line on humanity, where do we draw that line, how do we make that line, what is consciousness, etc., etc. I love that type of philosophical circle jerking. Absolutely great. I adore Nier Automata is potentially my favorite game of all time. It's a wonderful game that deals with a lot of deep, heavy issues based around humanity and asking what humanity is through the lens of a robot that believes itself to be human but not at the same time. Like that's a really interesting idea and broaches the subject of humanity and where humanity falls apart and why we fight and who we fight for and why we exist. It's great. That's absolutely my shit.
Notably, sorry, I just want to insert this about Nier Automata. A critical difference between it and Chappie is that it takes that issue of like AI and like the boundaries of humanity and like what is existence and where does life begin and like, you know, one identity begin and end. It covers that question from a lot of fucking angles. Chappie has one angle and it's the stupidest angle imaginable.
Chappie doesn't have an angle, Jackson. Chappie doesn't have an angle. Chappie just says, what if? And then goes, I don't know. What if, man? You know, that'd be weird, huh?
Look, I'm being as charitable as I possibly can be to Chappie. I'll be halfway. I'll give it a 0.5 angle.
All right, I'm on board with that. But the other comparison, and this is one of the comparisons I've already made, which is to the Iron Giant, which is a thing that I am more and more positive that is a very apt comparison to, which also has a lot of like presupposing humanity onto an AI and using them as a tabula rasa, a blank slate to impose a nature versus nurture type element to it, very strongly in Iron Giant with questions of violence and guns, and there's a whole thing about guns and violence and Chappie guns in particular. Like that's the part that's really getting me here. Really. Chappie is a little bit of all of those things. And so I should be like, yeah, motherfucker, let's goddamn go. Chappie, #1 gangster. And Chappie is not. Chappie was a wholly enjoyable film watching experience for me for all of the reasons it does not want to be. Chappie takes everything that I love about all those properties, all of the science fiction, all the robotics, all the AI, all the questioning of human nature, and becomes something that is part Zack Snyder, part future world, part nonsense, and oh my god. This is what I can say about this movie. I am going to watch it again. I will 100% watch this movie again because it was such a wild fucking experience that I need to experience it a second time.
Yeah, so I think Zack Snyder's a really, really apt comparison. Sean texted me that like while we were, I mean, Chappie was so wild we couldn't help ourselves this time. Like I saw that Sean had sent me a bunch of texts about it, like as I was sitting down to watch it, and then like live tweeted my reactions to him. So
yeah, no, this is a rare thing that we do. But the movie started, and I'm like, I have to text Jackson about this because this is fucking absurd right off the bat. And then I'm like, I'm not gonna bother him. You know, I don't know what he's doing. I'm gonna let it go. And then he responded, I'm like, well, no, but it's a free for all now. Let's fucking go, baby.
So, I guess like to describe exactly what makes Chappie so bewildering, and like the core contrast of Chappie is that it wants to be, by my count, more than this, but at its core, it's being pulled in three different directions. I think it's pulling itself in the Nier Automata direction, the Iron Giant direction, and the D Antwoord direction. So
it wants to be a lot of things and ends up being none of them.
It's sound and fury signifying nothing. I mean, this might be one of the stupidest movies I've ever seen. So, and why is that? Okay, so first, I guess, like, to avoid spoilers, it's hard to talk about what's so stupid about the Nier Automata stuff, but suffice to say that I was actually surprised, because that's usually what I clown on Chappie for, is it's like absolutely like juvenile treatment of that. It's not that prominent until about halfway through, where it suddenly gets a lot more prominent and is some of the most gloriously stupid stuff in the movie. But that's spoilers, so I'll wait to describe exactly what happens in that regard. Then, of course, as Sean has already mentioned, it wants to be the Iron Giant, like, you know, like a family-friendly, like charming, heartwarming story about a like buddy robot, which doesn't work for a couple of reasons. The first is just that, like, maybe it's because of all the other stuff surrounding it. Like, maybe in the context of like truly making like a fun, like family film comedy, I could find the Chappie design and the voice and all that charming. But as it stands, it's really irritating and cloying the way that he acts, like, you know, alternately like a baby boy and like a abused puppy and like all that stuff. And it's so like thuddingly like hitting the nail on the head with like, oh, like how do we, you know, raise our children?
It turns to the camera like once every 15 minutes to ask, do you get it? Do you understand what we are doing here? And usually the answer is yes. Chappie could understand what you are doing here.
I mean, some of my favorite lines in the movie are just like the one we always clown on because it shows up in Detroit Become Human, which is hilarious, is Chappie like to paint. when Chappie...
Hot take! Detroit Become Human handles this stuff better.
Oh, absolutely.
David Cage handles this better.
So...
I just need to stress that as hard as I possibly can. When David Cage is doing it better than you.
So, yeah, like Chappie like to paint. Why does Chappie like to paint? So we can have like a thuddingly obvious message about like, ooh, you gotta nurture your creativity, Chappie. We don't want you to go down the bad road, and we know this because the characters say it. I mean, it's like sub like Sonic Adventure 2 dialogue. Like, I actually, so for a personal project, for several reasons, I've been going through my old archives of stuff that I wrote as a teenager, and I found something I wrote my freshman year of high school that has strong Chappie energy in a lot of ways, right down to like the, turn to the camera and just state the themes and like the horrible tonal whiplash. So I mean, I as a 14-year-old was about on par with Neil Blomkamp on a narrative level. Now, whether that says good things about me at 14 or bad things about Neil Blomkamp, I leave to the interpretation of each individual viewer.
I believe the answer is yes.
So, and the tonal lurches come in from the D. Antwoord side of the movie, which is what makes the movie worth watching. It's this like whiplash between thuddingly stupid commentary and cloying, brain dead family movie with Chappie learning how to be a gangster from real life, DJ group D. Antwoord playing themselves as the least sympathetic people ever put on screen. Which is pretty bewildering in its own. Like, there's a lot of small stuff. The Sony PlayStation 4, or rather about 20 of them, features in a major plot point in the movie that we'll get into. And so this movie, like, it's not a charming movie about a Chappie. It's a charming movie about a Chappie where Chappie is like, knifing people to death and saying, "Go to sleep, little baby," as they're like begging and screaming for their lives. Like, it's such a tonal nightmare. Like, you're never sure like what is supposed to be like ironic or some sort of like, tragic, dramatic irony, what's supposed to be funny, what's supposed to be dramatic.
And the problem with that stems from the fact that literally no one talks like any real human.
Absolutely not.
So I was talking to Jackson about this in the pre-discussion because Dev Patel, Chappie's creator, as he continues to call himself, is basically spending the entire time talking like how a Redditor types, like, yes, you Philistines do not understand the true ways of which my genius manifests upon this robot, and how I am so much smarter and better than you who live in the filth and poverty. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Like, clearly the most classist bullshit metaphor ever fucking conceived, but also just so stupid, and yet still supposed to kind of be sympathetic. Meanwhile, D. Antwoord is over here just being like, yo, we're how Redditors think gangsters talk, yo, thug life.
Sporting their own merchandise.
Yeah, fucking miserable in that way. Just absolutely inhuman in all shapes and sizes. And then Hugh Jackman's over here talking like a complete crazy person, making no sense with no logical coherence to any of his actions in any real shape or form. Making some comment about like, I'm madder than a sock and a frog, or a frog and a sock, or some shit, eh? Right? You cheeky billabong. Roll. I'm Australian. And it's nonsense there as well. Like, no one in this movie makes a lick of coherent sense. And so you're constantly just battling this whiplash of like, what is funny, what is not funny, what is supposed to be serious, who am I supposed to root for, who am I supposed to be siding with? Because no one, they're all aliens. They're all aliens come to this planet to pretend to be humans, and none of them realize that each other are aliens. Fuck. And like, okay, I can summarize everything that I have just said in a single line in the movie, though. I think that there is one line that makes all of this incredibly clear.
Yep,
and it's not even a spoken word. On a TV at one point, a news ticker just reads, "Police robot commits crimes." And that in and of itself is not the worst thing in the world. It is an oversimplification, and it is not something a news ticker would ever say. Like, it would definitely not just be police robot commits crimes. The commits crimes is the part that's bothering me most of all, because news tickers are just gonna be like, yeah, I don't know, man. This dude commits crimes. What crimes? Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Like, it's a, like, active robbery in place or whatever. Something that makes sense in a real human world. And like, that ethos just permeates the entire fucking movie. This ethos of like, hey, you want to take another swing at that? Just give it one more once over. Like, you're almost there. You almost have it. but like just a little bit of a change would make it like make sense. And it wouldn't make the movie good, but it would make it boring in a way that you can understand what is going on. But because it's all police robot commits crimes, nothing makes a fucking lick of sense. And that includes the hairstyles. I'm still mad about all of them. They're so bad. Why does Hugh Jackman have a mullet?
Because he's a bad man. He goes to church and he likes rugby. That's my favorite, is that like Hugh Jackman is such a obvious like caricature of like like anti-Chappie like racist or whatever. That while he's doing his evil plots, he's literally tossing a rugby ball to himself.
Oh my god! At one point, he just fucking walks up and points a gun at Dev Patel. Like in the middle of an office, and everyone's just like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." And he gets up and is like, "Oh, it's just a joke, mate. I'm Australian," and walks away, and no one reacts. This came out in 2017, okay? Let's pretend that 2017 was that different of a landscape, right? Like, or 2015, I apologize, right? No,
15, yeah.
2015. Okay, let's pretend like 2015 was that different of a landscape, right? Let's pretend like 2015 was a whole nother world. People are going to react when you pull out a gun and slam it in the face of a coworker.
I was gonna say, not just pointing a gun, he like choke slams him onto the desk too.
Yes, that was a fireable offense in 2015 too. Last I checked. So like everything about this movie is so fucking alien. It's insane. It does feel like someone came down and wrote this with like 3 degrees of separation from what actual Earth reality looks like.
I think this is why I'm just so captivated by the movie, and like why I keep coming back to it as a reference point, and that it's stupid enough, and like, you know, its dialogue and its themes are so surface level that it's easy to clown on, and yet it's never boring because of the crazy D Antwoord shit. So like a prominent character that you know, not to spoil too much, although who cares? If you're watching this movie, you're gonna watch it for the fucking memes, and it is worth watching for the memes. That's the thing that makes this a better movie than Elysium. Elysium I don't remember a thing about, but I remember Hugh Jackman slamming Dev Patel into the cubicle. I remember fucking Chappie, you know, using 20 PS4s to upload, you know, people's minds onto. So, you know, this movie is funny, and yet it's also infuriating. The duality of man, truly. But, like, you know, you'll have, like, this is the same movie where, like, you're supposed to get this inspiring moment, which, like, I'm sure that, like, Neil Blomkamp or whoever was just like, oh, wouldn't this be a cool shot if we had Chappie, like, you know, blank slate Chappie, like, imitating He-Man, raising the sword and having the power, like, ooh, that's gonna look so good in a trailer. And
what never comes back at all. That has no relevance to anything. I forgot that scene. So much happens in this movie. I am not kidding that I feel like I have forgotten 3/4 of it already, because like something else happens and then pushes that part out. I forgot that he did this, and I thought it was gonna come back later, and it just never does.
It only exists. I mean, this is the Zack Snyder formula, right? It only exists because it'd make for like an interesting looking shot in a trailer. Is there any like greater significance to Chappie imitating He-Man? No. But so that's kind of the tone, that like, you know, hopeful, like cartoony tone that you could make a sweet kids film about. But a prominent character who Chappie's pretty close with gets unceremoniously stomped on by Metal Gear Rex, torn in half, and yeeted against the wall, and the movie just moves on.
In a movie that up to this point I think had been pretty fucking bloodless. Like there was some blood, but like for the most part, it like a guy got shot, but like you just saw like the Band-Aid patch that like, you know, you could get away with in like a PG-13 movie. This goes full on like blood and is so disjointed from everything else.
Can I talk about Dev Patel's character? Can we just like go into spoilers? Fuck spoilers. This is Chappie we're talking about. Who cares?
I have a couple things that I want to say before we actually get into spoilers.
All right. Please.
So first and foremost, fun fact about this movie, 2 fun facts about this movie, actually. Number 1, this was supposed to be the start of a trilogy. Jesus fucking Christ. Although that does make sense with like the start of the movie and the end of a movie, like why that feels like that would be leading into the rest of the trilogy. But God, I can only imagine what those movies would have looked like. Number two, this movie was written in 2 weeks during the shooting of Elysium, and oh boy, does it show. Oh boy, does it show.
Oh man, you didn't tell me that one and everything. Like, I see the universe now.
The Matrix unfurls in front of me. So yeah, that explains a lot about the quality of Chappie, and also again why I say you guys just want to take another pass at that script, because like you could bring it up to Elysium levels of like, yeah, I see what you're going for here. It's not good, but you know, it's passable. No, we're gonna go with that. Okay, I guess that's what we got.
And thank God they did it.
So the other thing I do want to talk about though is like I we've been incredibly hard on Chappie, and deservedly so, I would say. But I do just need to point out that like I think that if this movie had gotten like a third of its budget, I wouldn't be clowning on it as hard as I am. I think the fact that it got so much of a budget and let itself become so self-serious and so self-important is what makes it so easy to clown on. Like if this had come out like this as an idea, as a script, as an execution, as like a 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s Saturday afternoon B movie is fine. Honestly, like it's a movie that I could have envisioned watching on a Saturday afternoon, just been like, oh, that was, you know, weird and bad, and never really thought about it again, like a weird flashbulb memory that kind of comes back now and again, but like not something that deserves the clowning on that we are and will continue to give on it. It's the fact that it got a full fucking like AAA film release that makes it so laughable. I genuinely believe that if this movie had come out as like a low to mid-grade B movie, it would be kind of a cult movie in a lot of ways, as opposed to an absolute mess.
So I think that if it's more, you know, if it's more of a B movie and like the movie was made with more of that in mind, like basically you just got to cut out all the existentialism and Nier Automata stuff, because Neil Blomkamp is not equipped to do any of that. So, like, just having a cheap little B movie about, like, a robot trying to become a gangster, like, you know, a dark comedy. And even if you want to try and play with that contrast of, you know, like, innocent Iron Giant-esque character in, like, a dark, sinister world, that's hard to pull off. But, like, you know, you could do it with, you know, good control of your tone and a good script. But yeah, I think it's like, it's that embarrassing, it's the extra dash of like self-importance, I think, that really makes this movie so easy to clown on. And like what this has over Man of Steel, because after you pointed that out, I can't help but see it. It's got a lot of Man of Steel energy.
There's a shot that I swear to God was ripped directly from Man of Steel. Just stolen from Man of Steel.
And the thing that makes this more watchable than Man of Steel is that it stars Chappie and not Superman.
We were talking about this in the pre-discussion, and that like the fact that Superman is a real character that Man of Steel just absolutely fucking wrecks makes it a reprehensible garbage fire of a film, but Chappie is a garbage fire of a film that you can enjoy as opposed to get mad at.
Yeah, like Man of Steel is so dour and dull and boring. Like there's very little about Man of Steel that's that funny, except in like the esoteric sense. Like, oh, isn't it funny that Kevin Costner like doesn't let Superman save the dog? How stupid. But like it's not that funny while it's happening. Meanwhile, just saying the word Chappie is fucking funny. And the fact that it's so self-important makes it like a really, really good, you know, a cornerstone of like a good bedrock, a good point of criticism. It's memorable enough that you want to keep bringing it up, and it's stupid enough that it works as a criticism. It's a pretty perfect nexus of bad. And for that reason, I'm grateful to Chappie.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's call a spoiler tag just in case. I think that genuinely, if you're kind of curious, I almost would recommend going to go watch Chappie. Like, at this point, you've listened to us talk about this for nearly 30 minutes. You know if you want to watch Chappie. If you do, go watch it. We're going to spoil some stuff here. And, like, I think there is some joy to not having it spoiled because, wow. But if you listen to this and be like, I will never fucking watch this movie, don't give a shit about spoilers. Just keep on rolling through.
Exactly. If you're the type of person who will watch a movie for a meme, then absolutely watch Chappie. It'll be worth your time. I can't guarantee you won't be extremely frustrated, but you can join us in like the Chappie Clown Club, and that might be worth it alone. Otherwise, if like you want, if you're not the sort of person that can tolerate that, like you need to watch an actually good movie, then fuck no, don't watch Chappie.
We'll do we normally do like a little promo section here, but because we're going on hiatus, here's the quick one. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Horsies 2020, but it's not the Horsies. It's in fact just us talking about things that we liked throughout the year and helped us survive hell year and brought us joy, as opposed to like just clowning on things and talking about things that were shitty and bad. So that's what we're doing next week. Please follow the podcast at BDH_cast just so you stay up to date with the hiatus news and everything. I think that's really all that I want to mention, though. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to do a traditional Horsies this year, right? Like there are things we talk about, but I didn't watch that much new stuff. I don't know about you. Like we certainly didn't on the show. Yeah, so that should be a good time. And yeah, definitely keep following all our socials. We're gonna use this as like a hub for whenever the Horsecast returns, or for whatever comes next from either us individually or us as a collective once again. So
let's spoil the hell out of Chappie, shall we?
So Chappie uploads his mom brain to 20 PS4s.
Oh my God. Okay, and labels the flash drive mommy consciousness, and I lost my mind.
Funny enough, I think, did Lucy come out this year? Because that movie, it's some shitty like Scarlett Johansson movie that I don't care about spoiling. And like I think one of the reasons that like I had such a vendetta over this kind of movie is that movie also ends with a lady's brain being put on a flash drive, and it was also really fucking stupid. Yeah, but I promise I'd talk about Dev Patel's character because he's maybe the most incoherent because he's ostensibly like the heart and soul. I don't know who the heart and soul of the movie is supposed to be.
I was thinking about that the entire fucking time. Who are we supposed to care about? It certainly ain't Chappie before you come for me. I know he's the protagonist, but fuck that guy.
I mean, with Chappie, it's so like there's nothing to him. Like he's just like innocent and cute. Cute in like finger quotes. I mean, how cute you're gonna find him is gonna be like up to individual, interpretation. There are a couple scenes where I'm like, oh, poor Chappie, but like, they're fleeting. Most of the time, he's fucking annoying.
You know what? Here's the thing. I don't think I even had a poor Chappie moment, and that's not to like say that I'm heartless, because I think I generally connect with like things that are overly saccharine a bit more than you do in films, like especially when it comes to like robots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Characters in like Danganronpa, without spoiling anything, like I was way more attached to certain characters. So like theoretically, I should have also been attached to Chappie. Again, this should have been my absolute shit. Like I am so susceptible to like fucking pack bonding with anything. Fuck it, man. Slap eyes on someone like, oh, look at the poor thing. I could not give less of a shit about Chappie if I tried.
Fuck, what's that movie with Tom Hanks? Castaway? When he draws the face on the volleyball, that has more pathos than Chappie.
Sorry, continue. I just needed to dunk on the fact that like, no, like Chappie is ostensibly like supposed to be the protagonist, but also like is such a blank slate that like there's nothing to connect with on him anyway. So like you're supposed to connect to like Dev Patel or Deansford, or I mean I guess theoretically Hugh Jackman, but I mean he's obviously the antagonist, so no.
I mean, like, there were times where I thought Hugh Jackman was 1,000 times more reasonable than the other characters, and then immediately he'd go do some mustache twirler shit. Maybe that's just because he's like one of the only like decent actors. Like Sigourney Weaver's completely phoning it in. Dev Patel sounds like a Redditor. D. Antwoord is D. Antwoord.
That's not, again, though, that's not to knock on Dev Patel. Dev Patel is a pretty good actor. Just he did with what he had, and what he had was a fucking Redditor I am so smart speech. So
you have to be like dedicated to making this dialogue sound good. And I imagine Dev Patel took one look at it and said, "Oh, it's this kind of movie," huh? as did everyone else.
Philistines. The fact that he just yells Philistines out a car window. Like, listen, no one talks like that.
At people threatening him to gun him down, no less.
Yes. I mean, listen, there are people that talk like that, but like they don't get representation in movies, and it's a good thing they don't.
Or they're like the villain, usually, like an unlikable character. So, all right. So, speaking of that, so let's dive a little bit into the substance of Dev Patel's character, shall we? Because I don't know. One of the things that makes this movie so incomprehensible is like it's impossible to tell where your sympathies lie. Like, so obviously, it's a little more obvious with D. Antwoord because like it seems like it's supposed to be like, oh, look at these like bad boy criminals. Like, oh, Daddy D. Antwoord is treating Chappie so badly. But like eventually, through their relationship, they have some growth, blah, blah, blah. It's rote. It's shitty. They act too much like complete fucking psychopaths at the beginning to like ever like make you want to like root for them. It doesn't work at all, but I can at least see what they're going for.
Daddy D. Antwoord's character shift at the end of the movie comes out of literally fucking nowhere. Why he protects Dev Patel all of a sudden makes no goddamn sense. He has never once cared about Dev Patel up to this point and just decides, no, you know what? I'm going to throw my life away, I guess, for Chappie and Dev Patel. And why? Why, dude? Why?
I know I keep like getting distracted, but that reminds me of another scene that I fucking hate when Daddy D. Antwoord like drops Chappie off in front of like all those guys just like hanging around and are like, oh, it's a police robot, let's kick the shit out of it to like, teach him tough love, like make him a hard gangster robot. And like he like comes back without an arm and is like crying, and then the mom's upset, which makes sense. But Daddy D. Antwoord is like, oh, I didn't know that this would happen. It's like, motherfucker, what did you think would happen? Like, what? Isn't that why you like took him out there? Like, what is happening?
And like that scene too, again, is just so on the fucking nose with the metaphor. Like, I get it. Like, it's supposed to be like, oh, the poor struggle, and like that presents them in a different light, and like different things are seen as morally correct because of how they were raised. And like I genuinely sympathize with this point. Like, this is a salient, interesting point that has been done interestingly and better in so many types of media. But in here, it's just so thuddingly obvious and bad and like surface fucking level. Like, it feels like, honest to God, I am imparting that understanding onto the scene, because outside of that, it doesn't feel like that's what they're going for at all.
No, I mean, if you want to try and look for like broader societal commentary, like even though the movie gestures at it, fucking forget about it. Like anything involving, like, you would think that like a police department run entirely by drones, like
you would think that this movie had anything to say about police. You would think it had anything to say about police. And my friend, you are so wrong. You are so
more wrong.
So wrong.
So
like, it is neither cops are good nor is it cops are bad. It is just like, yeah, cops, man. And like, this is a movie ostensibly about police, and like could be RoboCop. This movie is almost RoboCop, but then it's like, you know what? That feels like it's making a statement. And we here at Chappie Industries, we don't believe in making statements, because you know what? Chappie liked to paint.
So this is a great transition. Let's not waste any more brain power on, trying to figure out any social commentary, because Neil Blomkamp certainly didn't. So let's go back to Chappie liked to paint. Why does Chappie like to paint? Well, because
you should finish up Dev Patel first. We're getting off track again.
No. This is coming back to Dev Patel. Because
Okay,
Dev Patel,
okay, cool.
Dev Patel is why Chappie like to paint. And so why is that? Because Dev Patel, as his creator, as God in this scenario.
Do you get it?
Chappie like to God. So as God in this scenario, Dev Patel tells Chappie two contradictory things, rather famously, amongst circles of people who reviewed Chappie back in the day. Maybe it's not famous at all, but I remember people talking about this. So Dev Patel tells Chappie, I'm going to give you the Jor-El speech. Like, you're an icon. You can do whatever you want. Like, don't let anyone tell you what to do. And then, immediately is like, Chappie, no. Gotta follow my rules. You gotta be a good boy, and you gotta like to paint and be, make poetry because I am your creator and I say so. And in a smarter movie, in a Nier Automata, let's say, that sort of contradiction at the heart of the characters of the commands from our creators, the expectations, and like the maybe, the false implication of free will, or like the futility of like trying to strive towards pleasing like a higher power. Like, that's something a smart movie like Nier Automata or like a Blade Runner would say. That's not Chappie. It's really hard to tell because like Chappie does get mad at Dev Patel for lying at him, and he also gets mad at Daddy D. Antwoord for lying to him. And like one of the worst, stupidest lines in the movie is like, human all same. Chappie, why? Chappie no like human lie. Like, why? And it's such a nothing of a statement. And then when it gets even worse when we upload Dev Patel into a robot body. Like, there's no...
Okay, I'm sorry. We upload Dev Patel into a robot body. I did not know that was an element of this movie. And the fact that I did not know that made this the greatest fucking scene I have ever seen. It
is a spectacular fucking meme.
They ported a video game, Dev Patel into Chappie. I can't.
So, not once do they give any lip service to the idea that, like, technically this Dev Patel copy is like a new consciousness, because that would be...
they're going to get to that in the sequel. They're getting that in part 2 of the trilogy. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Chappie understand consciousness. I think, low-key, my favorite line of the entire movie.
I do have to give a shout out to Daddy, stay there. Chappie's gonna crush him, man. I will be quoting that the rest of my life.
That's another great example, but I want to finish with Dev Patel first. And that, like...
I'm sorry, this is... I keep cutting you off because there's just... I have so many thoughts.
It's a lot. It's a lot. That's why we're talking about it. So, you could make the argument, and like, the barest framework of that contradiction, and like, maybe some sort of meaning is there, like, Dev Patel realizes he's like a bad, overbearing parent, and like his contradictory, but like it doesn't go anywhere, and like, you're never sure if you're supposed to like Dev Patel's character in the first place, so it doesn't fucking mean anything.
Again, you don't know if you're supposed to like him because he talks like a villain. He talks like a shithead villain. You Philistines.
Man, and then like that contradiction, there's another pretty infamous scene. And I think this one's a little more infamous, where when we get our exacta revenge upon cartoon villain Hugh Jackman.
Which I want to talk about Hugh Jackman here. When you're done here, I am going to talk the fuck about Hugh Jackman.
Sounds good. And I can say this because I just reread one of my scripts that had a scene nearly identical to this. This is evidence of Neil Blomkamp writing at a middle school level. So, infamously, like, Chappie gets this absolutely brutal fucking beatdown on Hugh Jackman and is, like, lecturing him like a dog the entire time. Like, you bad man, and, like, breaks his arm in 3 different places, and Hugh Jackman screams. He yeets him into the ceiling and creates, like, a dent in it. And all the while he's screaming, you bad man, Chappie teach you lesson, no more violence. And, like, again, just like the Dev Patel example, you can see how in the hands of a competent writer or director of visual storytelling, how, like, that could be, you know, maybe a funny dramatic irony, maybe an interesting dramatic irony, maybe like a tragic dramatic irony that, like, Chappie's been so poisoned by this terrible world. But we don't. The scene gives us none of that indication. It almost feels like it's supposed to be, like, really triumphant, but if that's the case, it's absolutely insane that Chappie's doing this while screaming about how violence is bad. The movie has, like, almost no self-awareness, and, like, it's not just that the tone shift is ridiculous, although it is. Like, I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan. I can't talk about ridiculous tone shifts and say that I always think it's a horrible thing, but the movie, in an individual scene, like, in something like Metal Gear Solid, there are certain scenes where it is more obvious that you're supposed to feel a certain way, that, like, something that is sad, that something that is supposed to get you pumped up is getting you pumped up. In Chappie, it's just like, you never know if, like, something is supposed to be funny or moving or really horrifying. Like, there is just no care put into the visual storytelling, because, again, it's got that Zack Snyder problem of, like, think of cool shots first, and their relevance to the story or the theme, you know, that could come later, if at all.
The truth of the scene of Chappie kicking the shit out of Hugh Jackman is that it is potentially, up until he throws him into the ceiling, which looks like absolute garbage, and we get from 2 different angles because fuck off. It is one of the most interesting, engagingly shot scenes of the movie. It feels like a good action sequence, and I was like, oh no, I'm enjoying this. And this is a theoretically horrifying scene. Like, this was like if, you know, at the climax of fucking Uncut Gems, when you're feeling horrible in the pit of your stomach and upset about everything that has happened, all of a sudden, like, crawling in my skin, like, kicks in, and you're just, like, pumped up, like, yeah, man, punch Howard Ratner in the face. Let's go. And, like, all the tension is just gone, and instead you're left with fucking the music video from Alone in the Dark, and it's nothing. And so you're just, like, with this horrible juxtaposition of a really well done, really interestingly shot action sequence interspersed with the recognition that this robot is functionally killing a man while repeatedly telling them that violence is bad and you should not kill.
And then it has the audacity to, like, linger over Hugh Jackman's, like, limp body, like, makes you think, huh? And it's like, no, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to be thinking?
Especially because it repeatedly frames some of Hugh Jackman's actions like almost as a Jesus allegory. And I can't quite place my finger on what it is about it. I mean, I can in one scene where Metal Gear Rex, the robot fucking moose, as the movie calls it, is descending upon Daddy Antwoord, and, like, it's like this angelic glow. And this is the scene I was talking about that reminds me of something out of Superman, because, like, there's a scene where Superman, like, descends on people, like, bowing before him, and, like, that is such Zack Snyder horse shit of, like, hero worship commentary, blah blah blah. But in this movie, it's just there because it looks cool, and this Jesus allegory is nothing. And so then we get this long shot of a broken Hugh Jackman on the ground, and, like, it's supposed to be, Jackson's right, it's supposed to be, like, you sit there and, like, makes you think, and, like,
you think what?
Yeah, and there's something about it that feels almost like religious in its approach to it. Like you're supposed to be reverent is the word I'm
We're
looking
approaching
for.
the pietà of Hugh Jackman and Chappie as he, like, you know, cradles him and tells him no more violence.
Yeah, like am I wrong? Is this something that only I'm feeling?
No, and like I think what makes it especially comprehensible is you could equally argue that the moose is shot that way, and then there's fucking Daddy D. Antwoord like spreading his arms out like Jesus, like self-sacrificing, except it's Mommy D. Antwoord who gets shot down and then uploaded to a PS4, and then a creepy Uncanny Valley body at the end.
Oh my God, the body at the end.
Born again, she's risen again.
Except
it's the Madonna.
I was gonna say, we can't talk about the religious allegory in this because even the religious allegory makes no goddamn sense. Like,
also,
utterly nonsense.
Like, the other thing that makes it so nonsense is that, like, you know, the Hugh Jackman is very clearly supposed to be like a conservative caricature, and I'm all for dunking on conservatives, but it's so lazy here. Again, it's just like Hugh Jackman likes his guns, he likes Jesus, and he tosses a rugby ball during his fucking schemes. Wow, brilliant. You know, what astute political commentary.
And it's not even like even that overt. Like, at one point he's like, oh, you know, he does the sign of the cross, and Sam's like, what the fuck was that? Why did he just do that? I'm like, oh, in 2 lines while other things are happening, he makes a crack about going to church that are so easy to miss. Like, it is superficial in its superficiality is the thing. Like, they do not delve enough even to make a superficial conservative comparison because everything about it is so easy to miss. He just seems like an asshole, not a commentary on conservatism.
Because he's not. It's just lazy signaling. Like, oh, he's bad because he likes guns. And yeah, Neil Blomkamp, I'm a fucking, like cringe lib. I hate guns too. But you can't just, have your character be a soldier who occasionally does a Hail Mary and expect that to be good enough visual shorthand for justifying every, like, mustache twirling thing he's about to do. Especially when other times, like, he sounds completely reasonable. Like, yeah, it probably is better to have, like, a law enforcement machine with a thinking, feeling human over like a fucking Google algorithm deciding who lives and dies. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with, I mean, this is why we don't want to dive into the fucking like police element because it's nonsense. The
biggest nonsense is the fact that when the police are provided with the opportunity to buy the whatever big robot from RoboCop, Metal Gear Rex Moose in this movie, a walking fucking tank with machine gun arms and missile launchers, the police say, nah, we're good. Just, you know what? OSU, the Ohio State University, has a fucking tank. No police station is gonna be like, you know what? We don't need a walking armory. We're good. That seems excessive. No one would ever turn that down. No cop would ever be like, no, that seems like a little much, right? But you know what? We will take a second tank for the civilians, just in case, you know? So let me talk about Hugh Jackman for a minute here. Speaking of Hugh Jackman, the whole, why was he here? Just answer me that. What was his point?
Because we want Metal Gear Rex to tear someone in half at the end.
Honest to God, that's the best answer I've got. He is so superfluous to everything else happening in this fucking movie. It is absurd. He ties into nothing. He ties into absolutely nothing. He does some stuff that like shuts down all of the other scout robots, which is what Chappie is. But like, it doesn't really impact Chappie on the whole. He does some stuff where he comes in with the Moose, Metal Gear Moose, and like shoots some people. But like, that could have been the other gangster, which the other gangster is subtitled for some reason, despite being more intelligible than some of the other characters in the movie.
How shitty would it be to be that actor and like see the movie and be like, Neil Blomkamp, what the fuck? Like, why did you just tell me to retake my lines if you thought they were hard to understand?
It's like, honest to God, Daddy Antwoord, there are times that I did not understand what he was saying. But like this dude who definitely had like a thick South African accent, 100%. I understood the entire time. I never needed subtitles. I'm like, no, I got what you were saying there. Don't worry about it. But then like Daddy Antwoord's like, gangster number one. And I'm like, you are a bad actor and you need subtitles.
I mean, fuck, you're gonna try and tell me that guy needed subtitles and like Vito Corleone and The Godfather didn't? Get the fuck out of here. He was fine. Like,
I almost did another Godfather impression there, but then I remembered how much you dunked on me for last time I did that, so I'm not going to.
a wise decision. More introspective than Chappie was. Again, so I have another like relating to Hugh Jackman. Is Chappie the dumbest movie about masculinity ever made? Because like that's the only other thing is that like Hugh Jackman exists to be like, ooh, look at big bad toxic soldier boy. Like, you know, oh, Chappie is soft boy and people around him are mean and that's bad and that's our commentary on masculinity.
I did get a lot of masculinity vibes as well, but I mean, just like everything else, like there's just some like vibes of very much like you know, there's different types of masculinity. Makes you think, right? And like, I guess movie, this didn't make me think, but you know what? You certainly seem to be under the impression that it did. So I honestly, I don't know if it was the stupidest, but it was certainly up there for the most nothing.
It's like, I mean, that's the movie like summed up in a sentence, like makes you think, huh? No. Like that's really all you need to say.
Okay, really quick though. I keep talking like about the Iron Giant of it all, but I need to really break this down and like explain, now that we're in spoilers, why this is just the Iron Giant, right?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Because like it starts off in a very similar way of like the Iron Giant, you know, lands and doesn't know how to talk and learns very quickly from Hogarth, and learns how to be a human and, you know, learns what's good, what's bad, and realizes that, oh, I shouldn't attack things, and that's because, you know, death is sad and a thing that we all must reconcile with. And there's even a scene where they look at a dead animal. There's even a scene where they look at a dead animal. And that's how they learn about death and understand what death is. But in the Iron Giant, it's moving and it's sad, and it happens fairly early on. It happens in Chappie like an hour and a half in, and you're just like, God, I get it. Fuck off. But the crux of the movie is understanding that violence is bad before they break down and appear as a weapon. And Chappie does this by, after rejecting guns, you know, takes a gun out to go shoot down Metal Gear Rex, and is never, you know, no for that. It just comes out like, oh, you know what? Sometimes guns are good. You know, maybe we should use guns more often. Whereas the Iron Giant, you know, there is that breakdown moment where the Iron Giant gets attacked by all the tanks from Chucklefuck McArmy Face, who triggers this whole thing where the Iron Giant remembers that he is a gun, or he is built to be a gun, much like Chappie was built to be a police robot, and, you know, breaks down into that before realizing that, oh, fuck, everyone's going to die if I don't sacrifice myself. And so he undoes that and says, you know, I am not a gun. I'm Superman. Me go, you stay, no following. Incredibly heartfelt moment. The Iron Giant is a perfect movie. I will hear no arguments from anyone ever. Whereas Chappie just goes, no, gun's good sometime. Bang, bang. And now we upload Dev Patel to a Chappie body. And so, like, it feels there's a lot of really structural similarities between the Iron Giant and Chappie, but the Iron Giant is a children's movie that runs an hour and a half and has about 10,000% more resonance and thematic idea than Chappie does, because it's very much honed in on one idea and understands how to make a point and land it, as opposed to kind of waffling it with some weird ideas at the end. Again, like the fact that the Iron Giant, you know, falls and then recomposes itself to recognize that it is what it chooses to be, is a really important, poignant moment. Whereas Chappie just takes out a gun and betrays his morals with literally zero consequence for it. He just pulls out a gun and shoots the thing. where's the payoff to that? He broke down and broke his morals after everyone else had already been hurt, much like the Iron Giant did. But the Iron Giant still paid for it by getting nuked. And Chappie just gets away scot-free and everyone's happy at the end. Oh, I literally had this, like, I've been comparing it to Nier Automata for a while, and like as we were sat down, I'm like, no, this is just the Iron Giant, and it really worked myself up into a fury because it is a property that is really important to me, and the fact that Chappie takes the baseline of what the Iron Giant is and then just fucking does not comprehend why it's a good movie is infuriating.
To be fair, I would assert that it's both.
No, it is entirely. But like, it is, the Nier Automata came out after Chappie.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so,
Sure.
If it had come out before, I think that I would have a stronger argument that Chappie is just Nier Automata, because Chappie is clearly just the Iron Giant. Nier Automata is Chappie but good, whereas Chappie is the Iron Giant but bad. I think that there's a direct like line between them, and like it's harder to compare Nier Automata to Chappie because Nier Automata is what if Chappie was good, and like Chappie would be a good comparison point in a Nier Automata episode, whereas the Iron Giant is a good comparison point in Chappie.
Yeah, and I think to speak to your Iron Giant comparison, I think this is the core, maybe the core tension of like why Chappie as a character doesn't work, is that the movie at no point you can tell two kinds of stories about this kind of innocent coming of age character. It doesn't even have to be a robot. Like, you know, these issues of like identity and like, you know, maybe overcoming your violent purpose. Like there are other stories like that. So there are different directions you can go with it. Iron Giant is one of like, you know, completely, you know, stay true to your morals. It's really resonant, and like, you know, he does pay a price for it, but you know, he saves everyone, and like, you know, it's really heroic and moving, and that's great. You know, you could also tell a more tragic story about like, you know, a soft character who is forced to like do horrible things to like, you know, acclimate to a cruel world. And, you know, like there's even ways to do that in like something that's more family friendly. I mean, that's basically once more with feeling, boys. That's basically the point of Gohan's transformation into Super Saiyan 2, is that, you know, he wants to try to stick to his guns, but if he doesn't do anything and like put that behind him, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, all that shit. All the bad stuff Cell does will be on him. And you know, you can go either way with that and tell like a resonant emotional story. But like Chappie just like flip flops. Is he like, you know, supposed to be our sweet, sweet boy who like, you know, we don't want to see fall? Or like is his arc like coming to terms with being a gun and like, you know, like figuring out what that means despite that? We don't know because this movie is fucking dumb.
And yes, in case some Chappie stans come and listen to this episode.
First of all, who are you?
The people who are still tweeting hashtag Chappie Johannesburg. But second of all, yes, we understand the nature versus nurture argument. However, it doesn't even engage with that in an interesting way. Like it is much like everything else in this movie, so incredibly surface level, and honestly feels largely uninterested with dealing with the idea of nature versus nurture, and far more interested with the idea of exploring just nurture as a concept. Like the elements of our lives make us who we are. And so like this juxtaposition of, you know, I was built as a police robot, am I a gun, versus this is what I've experienced, is this who I am, doesn't come into play because it doesn't really explore the nature of Chappie. At no point does Chappie seem to fall back on his police robot programming, which would imply a sort of nature versus nurture element to it. So you can fuck right off with that argument.
I guess while we're talking about programming, do we have any big things we want to say about Chappie? Because if we don't, I have my most like cinema Cincy nitpick that I was like, you know, freaking out about while I was watching it this time.
I have one last short little thing to say.
Go for it.
Before you want to get into that. And that is just another vibe that this movie tries to take from is the cyberpunk vibe. And I'm not talking CDPR cyberpunk. Please do not come after me right now. That is a shit show, and I am sorry I said cyberpunk at all. But cyberpunk as a whole is a genre I am interested in. I'm reading Blame right now, the Japanese manga that is incredibly cyberpunk, incredibly about transhumanism and what it means to just continue with this urban rot and urban decay. So there are a lot of vibes that Chappie the film gives off that is very akin to cyberpunk, especially at the end there when Dev Patel sheds his body for the Chappie body. Chappie body. Chappie body. And it's a vibe that I was thinking about a lot, in that like it just feels like, again, it has such a surface level understanding of what it is, especially like when we cut to DeAntford and like their whole aesthetic is very cyberpunk in a lot of ways, very much rejection of the duality of man and just like chaotic artistic, chaotic artistry upon themselves and upon their surroundings. But like, what does that mean in the context of Chappie? And the answer is, hang on, let me open the envelope. Let's find out. Oh, nothing, just like everything else. So that I guess I'm just harping on that mostly because it was just a vibe I picked up on and wanted to talk a little bit about, just because it is honestly very relevant to a lot of things going on right now. In that, Cyberpunk 2077 did drop, and I don't know, man. It feels like there is some cyberpunk vibes too here, and it doesn't know what it's doing with those either.
I mean, because like any influence that over Chappie, like everything's so surface level. It's just very clearly like, oh, I'm Neil Blomkamp. I like this. I like this. I like this. I like that. I like that shot. I like that. I like this plot element. I like this plot element. I like this theme. I like this. Just put them all in one big, stupid conglomeration of a movie.
It makes me think of, and you won't get this reference, but there are going to be people out there who do.
Go for it.
In The Good Place, when Sheedy has a mental breakdown and he's like, you put the peeps in the chili and you eat it all up. You put the M&Ms in the chili and you eat it all up. And he's like clearly having this mental breakdown and just making this horrible chili. And the point is, it's very existential and philosophical and smart in The Good Place. I highly recommend The Good Place, even if I don't necessarily fully agree with its philosophy and all sex. It's making a point. The point that I am making here is that that's a good scene. Chappie is that chili bereft of the context of anything else.
Fucking beautiful. Fucking beautiful. I almost want to leave it there, but I do have to indulge my Citizens moment, if I may.
Please, honest to God, there are so many of them that we could make.
There are so many, but this one made me the maddest, especially because I think it is comparable to Nier Automata, which like explores these things really well. It's when the first time they Chappie and Dev Patel are like looking at the moose. They're like, altering the programming and they're looking at that big honking moose.
Why is it called the moose? Everything else is called Scouts. Why is it called a moose?
Because it's big. I don't know.
Sorry, continue.
So look at the moose and they're like looking at the helmet, and Chappie's like, creator, Chappie have great idea. Put helmet on me and transfer consciousness. And it's like, all right, that's a pretty reasonable solution to his robot body, malfunctioning on him, like the battery being drained. Like, what is stopping Dev Patel from like after the battery dies? Like, Chappie is an AI. Like, you could take off his head and like, take out the chip and like, upload him to something else. Like, no problem. But like Dev Patel looks at Chappie and is like, sorry, Chappie, I can't. Like, you're doomed to die. Like, once your robot body's off, that's it. Like, we can never find a way to turn it back on. We don't understand consciousness. It's like, what do you mean? You made him. You made consciousness.dat.
I forgot everything in this movie is a .dat. Oh my god. And it's the most, again, thuddingly obviously named files in the world, which, you know what? Makes sense in real life. In the context of a movie, you're just like rolling your fucking eyes at.
So funny. It's so funny. No, but it's like, what do you mean we don't know how this works? You made him. Like,
no, and honest to God, here's the thing. I completely agree with you. Sam and I actually paused the movie and like fucking hashed this out because you're right. I think this goes beyond CinemaSins, honestly. I think this is like a core flaw with the movie. If all three of us independently went, nope, hang on, because the crux of this is that functionally you could move you could move consciousness in humanity. That is cyberpunk. That is transhumanism in the whole. That is what fucking oh my god, the Netflix original series Altered Carbon is about. Like the whole premise of Altered Carbon is that we have uploaded our consciousness into stacks, and like there's little things that slit into the back of your neck and you can move bodies with them, and like it's all in that one spot. And theoretically, if we knew how to transplant brains, yeah, I mean that's all it would take. It wouldn't be hard to do, but we do not have that ability as of yet to transplant brains from one person to another and thus transplant consciousness. We could just swap Chappie's head. We could just swap the fucking hard drive. I can hot swap my hard drive in my computer, which is functionally the brain of my computer, like that, and have everything I have on that hard drive on another computer instantly. It would not lose the consciousness of Chappie. That would imply that Chappie's consciousness somehow exists within like the batteries and motherboard and everything else. And you know what? Here's the thing. This fucking ain't goddamn ancient Egypt anymore. We don't believe that the consciousness is stored in the liver, and that's why we drill the brain out with a corkscrew. We know where the consciousness exists, and if we could move brains, problem solved, y'all.
Yeah, no, it would be like, haha, one final meme for you boys. It's like how in Metal Gear Solid, how like, you know, you're putting Raiden's brain in like an exoskeleton that looks like him, and like we're not, you know, copying Raiden to a robot body, because that would be a more legitimate concern, is like, you know, what they do with Dion that they never comment on. Dev Patel, I just remembered his character name for some reason. That never happens. But that's what they do with Dev Patel at the end, and they never comment on this, even though it's like, you know, a legitimate point to bring up that other cyberpunk and AI stories, you know, just do routinely.
Fucking Mass Effect 2 dealt with that. Like, this is a common trope in science fiction of asking, what is the self when there are clones and copies? Yes, continue. Just
so, yeah. No, very, very basic stuff, and even Chappie misses this point. So
again, they were saving that for the sequel. You got to get that sequel.
So, it'd be one thing if you said like, oh, Chappie, like if I copied you and uploaded you to something else, like you wouldn't be you anymore. That would be like, you know, more in line with those kind of stories. But like that's not even what we're talking about. Like if you did turn off Chappie and like put his head on a different body, it'd be like he passed out. You know, like you wouldn't even know what happened. Like, Jesus Christ, it's so. Oh, I hate it so much. Fuck Chappie.
Listen, we're to make another Metal Gear reference. We're not talking liquid arm here, all right? We're talking fucking straight up. All the electronics are in the head. Just hot swap. That's in Attack of the Clones when C-3PO's head swaps with the droid. Oh my god. Okay. I think we've hit the big stuff of Chappie. And like I genuinely think we could go through this movie again and come up with about 7,000 different things to talk about. But I think we've hit the high points. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I just want to say, after all this time, it feels so good to just rip into this fucking garbage fire of a movie. This was catharsis.
Oh, I'm so happy that it was in fact the bad movie we thought it was going to be, and not some like plot twist we both loved it type of thing.
God, wouldn't it be the darkest timeline if here at the end of the road we became Chappie apologists?
Especially after we ripped on it for 3.5
years of just constantly dunking on fucking Chappie, of using it as a shorthand for all manner of terrible sci-fi. At the end of the road, our take be, Chappie is good, actually, but no, it really, really isn't.
It's really not. It's so not. Well, you know what? I've been Sean McKinda. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Please follow me so I can keep you abreast of things that I'm doing in our long hiatus.
And I'm Jackson Keller. Same thing. Follow me at Jackson J. Keller. I'll still be alive and around, hopefully. Knock on wood.
You know what? He's going to be in Japan, so we should be getting some interesting tweets here coming up from him. So you should definitely follow him for that as well.
Follow me for some sick Mount Fuji shots and revel in jealousy as I go and ask everyone in town where sailors hang out, because I'm basically going to be living in the town from Shenmue.
Fuck, I watched the Nintendo Direct with the Nintendo World opening in Japan, and like, God, I'm so jealous of you right now.
Oh.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, buddy, you better believe as soon as I'm vaccinating, that is my first stop.
Oh, fuck. I am outrageously jealous. But you know what? Theoretically, hopefully I will be visiting you in like October of this year, and you better fucking believe we're going to the goddamn Nintendo World.
Let's go.
Goddamn better believe it. If you want to keep in contact with the podcast and like keep abreast of what we're doing as a unit, that's at BADH_cast on Twitter. The Patreon is still patreon.com/BADHcast. If you're like, I don't know, I want to go check out what they got over there, you can. Again, we're not charging people right now. Fuck, we might start releasing some of our bonus episodes for free. Just like an occasional, like once a month, like, hey, we're still around. This is now available for everyone type of thing. We'll see what happens with that.
We had some real bangers there. It'd be a shame if they were blocked off behind a paywall that only people who are already paying can access. So,
yeah,
I think that's a good idea to like slowly drip them out, as time goes on.
Yeah. So you might start getting some of those. As always, we'd like to thank Close the High with use of our theme song. It is Suicide Alternate Take off the album High Octane Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band, and you should go check them out wherever you can. Please stream their music, buy their music, support them on Bandcamp, whatever you got to do. They absolutely deserve it, as all artists do right now. They are absolutely struggling with gestures at the world. Also, thanks to 25yearslatersite.com, there's a little button up in the corner that you can go click on, but you should absolutely stop and check out some of the great and talented writing that people are doing over there. There's a bunch of really talented people doing a bunch of really great writing, as I literally just said in the sentence prior. My brain has been broken. Damn you, Chappie.
Better writers than Chappie. Chappie liked to write, but he's not very good at it.
No, Chappie not very good at writing. Chappie has to upload his brain to 20 PS4s, so... Next week, as I said, we're doing the Horsies 2020 edition, which is not going to be called the Horsies. It's going to be something else that we still have not come up with the name of.
We might as well call it the Horsies for continuity. I think that'd be fun.
That's fair. Yeah, it's going to be the Horsies, but it's not going to be the Horsies you know. It's going to be a new Horsies that comes back just to be like, this shit's good and fun, and you should experience it if you're looking for some joy in your life.
Celebration of joy. It's gonna be a good one.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go